It's been a really busy couple of days, as it always is.
Yeah.
Lots going on in the world, but I had some things I wanted to explain to you so you can kind of understand the big change that took place overnight last night.
Okay.
And for those of you in the US, you probably started to feel it later on in the afternoon, early evening last night. And for those of you, of course, in like Australia and that part of the world, it would have been early morning your time. So kind of exciting stuff.
Okay.
So we have some things to talk about. So you've heard of, I'm sure, the tree of life.
Yes.
And you've probably somewhat heard on the internet about an anti-tree of life.
Mm-hmm.
So there were dueling trees of life in the multiverse.
Okay.
Now, if you were to look at the tree, you would actually see, you know what? I just thought about this. I can actually draw this out for you. I have something exciting for you guys. Here, take a look at this. Look at that. I know.
We're
Look at
digital.
that.
Digital.
You want to get digital?
Let's get digital. Digital.
I know. And now we can both be here while we talk. Isn't that cool?
I love it.
As this says, look at this. We have a new whiteboard, everyone. Very exciting. And I don't know where that other thing came from, but this is my first time using it. So we're just going to go with it. WH equals Eitboard. Eit. I know. So exciting. And I can just wipe it clean and I don't need a marker and I don't need anything. Don't need an eraser.
Beautiful.
I know. Much, much better. Okay. So let's talk about the multiverse here. We're going to draw this out.
Yeah.
Okay. So we would have had a tree of life with many, many branches that extended throughout every density, every dimension, and to every being. And we had the same down below. And this would be the third density here, in between here.
Okay.
Oops. Can't even write on this. Jeez, Kim. Okay. Okay. And 2 and 1, 1 and 2. So 2 and 1 and 1 and 2 would be inside here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would have had the anti-tree of life. So in the beginning of the creation of the universe, we had beings called the immortals. And the immortals were what you would call angels and archangels, rulers of the realms, these types of things. And there were millions below and millions above. And each one received a golden apple. What was the golden apple actually? So the golden apple was filled with wisdom and the gift of source. So you could call it wisdom. You can call it in part love, the love of source. And you can later on down the road, some of the apples became knowledge. So as the above, so is below, both sides received the golden apples.
Was it actually an apple, or did it look like an apple?
It was a crystal. It was a crystal in the shape of, I guess you would say, it wasn't actually a crystal apple, but it was a round ball. But everybody called it the apple.
Okay. All right.
So as you would take a part of the knowledge, well, let me go back to the trees here for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So in talking to try to figure out what these were about, because it became a real big issue in the last few days, Source basically said the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree. Funny guy, jolly jokester always. And what he was referring to is if you imagine the tree of life and the tree of anti-life being directly connected to that would be Source's veins throughout the multiverse, for lack of a better term, where the blood of Source, the essence, energy, consciousness, matter, wisdom, love, and crystalline time would flow throughout the multiverse. And then, of course, the opposite of that in the lower astral, the apples originally were attached to the tree. So even though the immortals or the angels on both sides however you call them, they were still attached to the tree. Now, once you disconnected that apple from the tree, the life inside the apple would begin to dwindle, just as you would if you disconnect an apple from an apple tree, the life in the apple begins to dwindle. It no longer has life to it. It falls to the ground and eventually it rots. So the deep state had, and I would say a connection, a deep connection with the lower astral immortals. And when they disconnected from the tree of life, the apples eventually went barren and went dark. And this birthed what you would call the tree, as you know in the Bible, as the tree of knowledge.
Okay.
Versus wisdom. So knowledge and wisdom are two very different things, because now we're going to go into human history after this. So knowledge and wisdom are two very different things. Wisdom is your intuition, your innate knowing. Wisdom only comes from source. It is ever abundant and ever flowing, and it never stops once you connect to your wisdom, your inner knowing, your higher self, whatever you want to call it. It's direct wisdom from source, and it will never steer you wrong. If you want to know how to make something, you want to know how to do something, you want to know how to heal yourself, you want to know how, apparently I'm flashing, you want to know how all of these things happen, you can get the answer to anything on when you are seeking the wisdom of source. The one thing you can't do with wisdom is you can't do dark and evil things with wisdom. It will never give you the answer on how to blow up a country, how to take over a planet, how to destroy people, how to kill people. That is not what it's designed to do. It will give you all the wisdom of all things natural in the world and in the multiverse. So once the apples were disconnected, all of the apples on both sides began to dim, because the wisdom from source became disconnected from the apples. That left only knowledge. Knowledge is information that is passed from one being, one person, to another. It's historical records. It's what you find on the internet 99.99% of the time. There are people that impart wisdom through the internet, and I understand that. But everything we quote unquote know, that we are fed through our media, that we are fed through all the other channels, is knowledge. You are acquiring knowledge, because with wisdom, you don't need any knowledge.
Right.
You have all the wisdom. Knowledge doesn't create anything new. It merely passes information on. So, how cool is that? I'm just telling you, that's really cool. Okay, so let's start talking about humans. So in the beginning of human history, we have books like the Bible that tell us that Eve ate of the tree of good, the knowledge of good and evil. So the knowledge of good and evil, which one was which one did what, came from one of the apples of knowledge. Not the apples of wisdom, because at that point it was already dark. And that's why they say the serpent convinced her to eat of the tree. This is real history. They are still doing this to this day. Okay, so for the longest time, the deep state has had in their possession, more importantly, the anti-silent circle has had in their possession what you would call an apple of knowledge. Okay. Ooh, we don't want to give that any gold color, do we? Here we go. Do you remember me saying, and I've said it countless times, that they read through these old texts and they can't, and I'm like, why are they still reading that? That makes no sense because everything has changed.
Yeah.
Why would they not know that everything has changed?
Yeah.
And we figured it out. It's because the apples were tied directly to something called the books of knowledge. So the books of knowledge in this particular case are books that contain information which came from the apple. They're almost semi-holographic. They are written in a light language and also an anti-light language because they both look kind of the same. You would call it the language of the immortals or the language of the angels, depending on how you look at it. Now, the books of knowledge is where they're getting all this ridiculous information from because remember, knowledge does not change. It is information only that's passed from one being, be it lower astral, a demon, whatever it is, to another. It does not change like wisdom changes. If you are in a particular circumstance, you'll gain the wisdom or the intuition to make a change. Now, that circumstance could change. Like, for example, say that you decided to start a new job and the job wasn't what they told you it was, and then you would get more wisdom on where to look for your next job. Like, This is just examples. How to raise your kids. Your kids are human beings. They have sovereign will. They change. One day it might be great to tell them not to do something in this way. And the next day you might have to do it a different way or teach them math in a different way. Or the world is constantly changing. The multiverse is constantly changing. It doesn't stay the same. So now it makes perfect sense to me why they keep reading these old texts. And I'm like, but that's not even there anymore. Why are they still looking for this alignment? Why do they think the full moon, the new moon? Because the books of knowledge can only repeat old data. It does not get any new data. Where I'm over here getting the wisdom, I'm like, I'm scratching my head. I'm like, why are you doing the same thing? Now it makes perfect sense. So along with the books of knowledge, we also had, now both in anti-source and to some lesser degree, the immortals, and to some even lesser degree, information being passed to our global deep state. And this would be the book of evil. And along with that, the book of death.
Lots of books.
They got lots of books. Yeah. See, this is why they think they're so smart, because they had all of these different libraries that they felt were from the immortals, and therefore they had more information than all of the rest of humanity.
Well, I mean, it is information. It's just wrong information.
Because it's all knowledge-based information.
Yeah. Okay.
So the book of evil would record things like evil deeds and these types of things. And I'm going to tell you about you in a second, so you'll kind of grasp the concept. And the book of death would have been all about the death of the human, the death of the soul, the death of the vessel, because remember, only Source gives eternal life.
Right.
And nothing ever happens to the soul. But when they created the incarnation cycle, and we would go through the cycle over and over and over again, that created the need for a book of death. Now, both the books of evil and the book of death was connected to the anti-tree of life. I hate to say life because it's actually live and then therefore the tree of evil. So on our side of it, us being organic beings, I'm assuming all of you watching this are that, and you're not with these people. And if you are, then I'm sorry, you're on the wrong side of the fence today. Okay, so we have a book of life.
Or live.
And we also have a book of life.
Okay.
Whoops. So we also have we have a book of life and a book of live on our side of it. We don't have any books of knowledge, unfortunately, but we do have a book of wisdom.
Now, Kim, just to clarify, are the apples on our side, are they still on the tree or did they fall as well?
Well, all of them fell except for one. And that last one was at source.
Okay.
Now, there's been a long, drawn out, centuries old fight to gain control of the last remaining working apple. So they have been running around the multiverse looking for apples with any kind of life or live left in it or wisdom left in it forever. And this is not just the humans in the deep state. This is also the lower astral beings. Everybody wants an apple with a little bit of wisdom left in it. So the anti-silent circle, or your black nobility families, and some of the other deep state members had obtained apples, which they were about 5, which only retained knowledge at that point. They were completely devoid of any wisdom.
Right.
So they've been looking for the one golden apple forever that will then light up the rest of the apples, billions and millions of apples throughout the multiverse, and reattach those apples to the tree of life. But that's only a divine decision. That's only a source decision or anti-source. But now we just have one. We have source. So what happened yesterday, it became time because the fabric of the multiverse has been reweaving itself. It became time, and it was okay, because I panicked a little bit about this too, when he said it's time to reconnect the apple to the tree of life, because it had been separated from the tree of life. That's the main source apple of wisdom.
Okay.
And then it will be time to connect all the apples throughout the entire multiverse. Now you can see why I panicked, back to the actual tree of life and not to a tree of anti-life. So now you can see, I mean, we don't have anybody living down there anymore, but we still have crazy humans on this planet. So I panicked. I said, you sure it's time? He said, oh, yes, it's time. So, okay. So this is what started happening yesterday, midday my time. The apples started reconnecting to the tree. Now, the order and their chosen one, Mr. Vincent, and I'll just use his first name for this. He's dead now anyway, but I'll just use his first name for this, was so excited. He goes, she gave us back the apple. And they thought I was tricked. They thought, oh, look, it's going to now give us the wisdom too. No. It doesn't work that way, because the wisdom is written in a different language. Number one, it's written in the light language, and it's not something that they would understand. And the orders only come from source. So it's not going to give them power. If anything, it takes away their power, because the apples are ours. They are instructions they are wisdom from source and how to fix the planet, how to live within natural law. And by law, don't confuse human law with nature.
Right.
You know, a plant grows, it goes dormant in the wintertime. You know, leaves come back in the spring. These are all parts of nature. This is how nature works. We study nature. We study the human body, which isn't natural at this point in time. We study all of these things to understand how it's just a perfect balance when it's not interrupted by something that is the opposite. Our science does not run on wisdom. It runs on knowledge, because it was created by the deep state for us to understand.
Right. And
to accept the limitations of knowledge and what little knowledge they actually gave us from the books of knowledge. So last night, I mean, my alarm started going off. I'm like, what is going on here? So Mr. Vincent started going, we now have the power. We will have the wisdom of the world because I have the apple, and, you know, all of these types. Oh, God. And they planned some more ceremonies. On the mountains of Montenegro, I will open the gateway and the immortals will come back and help us. And, you know, oh God, it was awful. It was
Wow.
actually hilarious. I got to say, I was like, okay, Source, you said. So it wasn't until 4:00 a.m. this morning, my time, when I got woken up like a shot because these guys started realizing the books didn't contain more knowledge because that's all they ever knew.
Yeah.
The books didn't contain messages from the immortals. The books had my name on them, and the instructions were for me.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. And that sent everybody into a full-on panic this morning. Vincent, however, thought that he could actually use the apple, which was now live, for himself. However, it actually worked the opposite way, and it meant his demise. You cannot not follow the orders of Source. They're my books. He said they're my books. Those are my apples. Those are not your apples. And when someone tries to use the apples for something that is not in the instructions and you are not the person they belong to, they've been given to, then it is ultimately your demise. You can't deny it. There's nothing they can do to change that fact. When the divine makes a decision to do something, then it is so.
Mm-hmm.
So my job is not to own all the apples. My job is to distribute those apples to all of you, organic humans, to regain the wisdom of Source.
Wow.
Now, that stream began to flow here on Earth at about 4 a.m. Mountain Standard Time today. So the stream is now, it's a stream. It's not a river. It's not a, but over time, it'll start getting larger and larger and larger, and there is no shortage of wisdom. So human beings will now have the direct wisdom of Source. Now, do you know how nervous that makes the deep state?
Oh, pretty nervous, I would imagine.
Oh, pretty nervous. Yes, pretty nervous. But you'll have your own world wide web of information if you just listen. Now, listening is up to you. I mean,
Yeah,
how
so
many times have we?
Oh, sorry, Kim. I was just going to say, and you're probably going to explain this, but how do you access that wisdom then? Is it through the same ways we're already connecting with Source? It's just going to be stronger?
Yes.
And okay.
It'll be stronger. It'll be easier. The messages will come in depending on how you do that. Everybody is different. Everybody makes that connection differently. For some of us, it's just that voice in the back of your head that says, oh, I forgot to do this morning, right when you're waking up or as you're going to sleep. And so for some of you, it's strong intuition. Do not go there today. Do not take that job. Something better will come along. And even when your logical mind wants to go, no, I need a job. I need this. Mm-hmm. I can't do that. I'm too old for that, or I'm too this for that. I'm too young to go there. Whatever it is, it's your own physical self that stops you from following the wisdom of Source and having ultimate faith.
Okay.
So as you start connecting to more and more wisdom, you'll start to understand how nature works. And then that makes the restoration plan easier. It is actually going to define what you're supposed to do. So if you have been confused as to what you're supposed to do as part of the restoration of Earth, I am not the information booth at the mall. You will have to get your direct wisdom from Source, and you're going to have to work at it for some of you. But being reconnected to live and life changes everything for you. You now don't need an actual physical object called a book. You are the book. You have a direct connection to the writer of the book. That's you. They talk about judgment in the book of life, at the end of life, so to speak, but there is no more end of life. Yes, people are still dying on earth. Your physical body goes away. Your soul never does. Your soul is immortal. It is the immortal part of yourself. Eventually, we'll figure out how to repair your bodies, in self-repair your bodies. And as I said, we're getting closer and closer to that time when things are going to really start changing here for the physical vessel and the physical self. But the scariest part about it is that the deep state received no wisdom for what they wanted it for.
And they realized that, right, Kim? That was obvious.
Oh, yes, they have realized that. It has been quite a morning for me. Let me just tell you that for sure. So the apples exist throughout history. You can find them in Greek mythology when Aries, you remember me talking about Aries several months back and who that was? She was the opposite. So Aries, through the apple of, I think they called it in Greek mythology, despair or distraught or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And she threw it at, I think it was one of the gods' weddings or something, and then brought them eternal, troubles and turmoil in their marriage or something like that. There's also a Russian mythology story about the golden apples. There is obviously the apple in the Bible. I mean, there's an apple that everybody knows. So there's a lot of information out there about it. Another appropriate movie that you might want to watch that tells you a little bit more about apples would be called Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed talks about how the Templars were hunting for the apples throughout the ages. They even started taking some of the bloodline that were the protector of the apples of wisdom in life, and they started putting them through past life regression machines so that they could find the apple because they just needed an apple that still had wisdom.
Okay.
Yep. So now you can't use the saying the apple falls a little not too far from the tree anymore about yourself. You are actually part of the tree once again and reconnected. So I'm hoping that you'll start to see a difference. I know that I saw a difference. I felt a difference last night over what I had been feeling for the last couple of days as far as, different things that were going on. And it just felt like sometimes there's only so much cleaning and clearing of things you can do until something new and exciting comes along. Yeah. So I'm excited to share that with you today. In more of the, let's just say, normal people sense, we are seeing the Federal Reserve ties to banks and ties to your money dissipating even further as of this morning. So the Federal Reserve still had no access to the bank's accounts that used to be held within them, known as your routing numbers, your IBAN numbers, your Target 1 and Target 2 systems, depending on where you are in the world, your SWIFT systems. And those were all completely disconnected. Therefore, the Federal Reserve couldn't see anything anymore. And all of the closed loops that were in the Federal Reserve, which were tied to each individual bank on tiers 1 through 9, moved down to the bank level. And then the banks tried to continue on with the custody of all its client accounts. And then that disappeared also this morning. And so now you pretty much are your own island unto yourself, electronically speaking, as of about 45 minutes ago at the time of this recording. So those closed loops, each account in the bank, are now connected by key integrated monetary system rails, which can still appear as regular ACH transfers. We don't want everybody to panic. We can change it at some point in time. Mm-hmm. So now you're moving money amongst yourselves without the cooperation, for the most part, of a bank. Now, if you call a bank and you walk into a teller window and you say, I need to withdraw cash from my account, they can perform that function. Mm-hmm. If you say, I'd like to send a wire transfer because you don't like to use the online portal for that, or your bank doesn't have that function, you can go into the bank and the person can help you with that function. So they'll still have that type of access to service. Because remember, the option for banks to survive was to become a service provider to you, and then we, meaning the alpha system, would pay the banks for providing the service to all the humans. Right. Now, they can choose to do that or choose not to do that. It's just going to cause a little bit of disruption in places where walking into the bank and getting cash is a lot more frequent than going to an ATM machine and getting cash. or other electronic features, because those are things we can control. We can't control what banks do. But as far as stopping us, part of this in the news I talked about, I think it was last Wednesday. I think Wednesday I talked about it. This is what we were seeing in density 1, plane 1, 3, 2, and 1. And these are the things that are being pulled apart. So it's been a really bad 48 hours for the cabal and very disappointing that I didn't do this for them. Now, I'm sorry. It's just, again, these are orders and instructions. They come from one place, contrary to popular belief. And then we all make a group effort to carry them out. And by all, I mean we all. Everybody watching this now will get their own set of instructions. You can choose to follow them or not follow them. Some of them might seem crazy and outlandish, and you need to do this. And it's going to sound, why would I go there? And why would I stand on that street corner at 5 o'clock today? Why would I do that? And then all of a sudden you go there and something transpires. You meet the love of your life. Maybe you're a witness to a car accident and you're a doctor and you need to help somebody at that time in that place. This is wisdom. This is intuition. This comes directly from source. So when I say we all need to follow the instructions, I'm talking about all of you too. If you want to restore this planet, you need to follow the instructions that come from wisdom, intuition, your inner knowingness, not knowledge. And knowledge oftentimes will go contrary to wisdom. The wisdom that is innate within yourself may prove contrary to what you see on the internet. As an example, how do I explain everything that I've read about growing tomatoes says absolutely do not plant them next to the rosemary. I'm not saying that that's the case, but there is a certain, when you plant your garden, but you're telling me that it's okay to do that now, as long as I position them in this way. Okay, but everything I read on the internet tells me that that is not true. But you go with your gut and you have the largest harvest of tomatoes you've ever had in your life. And then it'll become easier and easier to follow. And sometimes you start, and I've done this too, especially in the beginning. I promised myself I would never go against my intuition ever again. And I would never go against the wisdom ever again. And this was several years back. Because every time I did, I want to think the best of people sometimes. I want to think, oh, give this person a chance, or, oh, he's not that bad of a guy, the guy you're dating. And you know it in your heart, and everything in your body is telling you no, but you do it anyway, or the woman you're dating, or whatever it is. And you go against that, and ultimately it ends up probably worse than it would have been if you just stopped it on the second date, or you had just planted the tomatoes in that section. Does it really matter? If you didn't get the right, maybe plant them in both sections if you don't trust your own intuition, and see which one works. Yeah. You can trust the internet and the knowledge, or you can trust yourself and your inner wisdom, because it doesn't lie. Those that are readers and psychics that trusted in the knowledge won't have those skills anymore. Those of you that are on the light side and you are gaining wisdom, the wisdom never falters. If you're helping people by passing on wisdom, then when you go to do what it is you do and you're helping, maybe there's times in people's lives where they like to visit. I hate to use the term psychic because I wouldn't say that. People that are connected to source, that are might be more connected than the average everyday person, have had that connection since birth, and maybe for others they struggle, so they come to someone like you to gain the wisdom for them. So you ask source, what kind of wisdom do you want to pass to Mary or Fred or whoever's sitting in front of them? And then the wisdom comes through and you pass the wisdom on to that person. But then again, wisdom is ever changing and ever flowing. And it changes with the way the direction of the energy, the consciousness, the world moves. Should I go on vacation on this day? How many people are going on vacation? How many people live in that vacation spot? How many people could be affected by you going on vacation there, or giving a seminar, or creating a product, or, whatever it is that you tend to do in the future. The wisdom will constantly tell you how to change your business, change your model. Knowledge just tells you what everybody else did.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with schools. How are schools going to change in the future? What do you see happening then if your child has all the wisdom they want? Yeah. Now that's going to be scary for us parents, isn't it? A little bit, just a tiny little bit. But they have the wisdom. There's often times people say, out of the mouths of babes. How many times have your children come out and given you a whammy that turned out to be right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not convoluted with the knowledge. Your logical brain kicks in when you start going to school. This is why schools were designed this way, to stop your wisdom, because kids will eventually stop trusting it.
Yep.
And then they only trust the knowledge. And knowledge was only in part or allowed to be leaked out to the average everyday person through education, educational classes. Now, think about all the ways we use knowledge in our average everyday lives and trying to define what is really going on in this world. What's really going on with governments? We're still looking for knowledge. You're not looking for wisdom, and you're not looking into your instinct as to what's really happening. And once you do, then you'll understand the difference. You'll go online and you'll start reading it, and it will actually make you physically not feel well. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a lot of people watching this that happens to all the time. You physically feel ill when you come across something, and it's even becoming more and more prevalent. I know it is in my life. There was a time 15 years ago that I could eat some Doritos. I cannot eat Doritos now. I cannot do it. I can taste chemicals in it. I can taste what is in that food. And everything tells me to walk away from it. I can't even stand the smell of it anymore. Yeah. That doesn't mean I'm not, how do I say this? I'm not judging anyone that eats Doritos. I just personally cannot do it. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of other things that people do that I just never. I cannot do that. That's not my thing. Cannot do that. Contrary to popular opinion. But anyway, the point is that things are changing. And I know for some of you, it doesn't feel like it's fast enough. But if you just go within, follow your intuition, follow your own guidance, not mine, not Sunny's, not, don't get me wrong. We love having you here, and we love helping you as best we can. But really, the last leg of it is up to you. Yeah. So do we see a run on the banks? No. Based on the changes that happened this morning. What about the markets? There have been several attempts for them to crash the markets, especially once they found out about the Apple. Mm. But I said, no, sorry, guys, that's not your Apple. Well, actually, I didn't even say that. The divine said that. So the instructions are for restoration. The instructions are for all of you that can read the book. The book can be read from anywhere in the world. You can connect to that book like you would connect to anything else telepathically, through meditation, connecting to source, or you just connect directly to source and you don't need to see a book. But if you feel, some people like to see an object, right? So they meditate on that object, and then that object appears and they can see it, or a place or a person. Mm-hmm. And if that's you, then, feel free to do it however you like. But to connect to the book of life and the book of life is yours, and the book of wisdom. They're out there. They're yours. They're not mine. I have a part of it, sure. And mine isn't any greater than yours or less than yours. I just have a job to fulfill. You also have a job to fulfill for Source, and for yourself. In other words, everybody has a passion, something they live for, something they love to do. And that is your job. That's it. The thing you're the happiest doing in this world. It doesn't matter what you're making or cooking or baking or flying or whatever it is, or creating a whole new aircraft or a whole new system or inventing some new technology that's going to cure X or Y or Z. That's your passion. Whatever you wake up every day and you are the happiest you've ever been and you're feeling the love of Source when you're doing it, that's it. That's your job on this planet. And it might to you seem, well, look at what Kim's job is and Sunny's job is. What's my job? Like, oh, look, I'm just making, soap or something. But you're changing the way people take care of themselves. You have to not think about tasks being small. And then maybe you evolve that into adding some ingredients that can help cure people of problems through their skin instead of antibacterials that take away all the good bacteria from your skin too. Like, we need to teach people a whole new way of everything in a natural way of doing things. What is that? So stop paying attention to knowledge. Don't get me wrong. Sure, there's some great ways you can make chicken piccata online, 15 different ways from Sunday. That's lovely. If you want to get a recipe or something like that, fine. But as far as how your life goes, your life choices, things that no one can impart that onto you. Now let's talk about, someone had brought up to me about being an older folks, they're in their 70s and they said, well, what do? You have wisdom. You have wisdom and life experience. Wow, that's really cool. So everybody has a part to play in the restoration plan. If you are here on Earth at this time, this is for you and you have a job to do. You can still have sovereign will and choose not to do that job. You can say, I hate being happy every day. That's your choice. I can't make you do it. I'm not going to try to make you do it. I'm not mom.
Kim, do we have any indication of what the other side, the deep state, so to speak, could do or might do with this information now, based on stuff you've seen this morning? You said it was kind of a crazy morning. What do you think is going to happen at this point?
Well, over the course, by about 6 a.m. my time, they had figured out those are not your apples. The silent circle knows what that is, full well and good. They've been hunting them down for eons. They have seen a lot of changes take place, both in AI systems, also throughout Earth. Things that they could detect in the past are not detectable. They're not there anymore. Montenegro is not a post and hasn't been for a long time for Abraxas communication. They thought, well, our books are broken. Our books are broken, and they start shaking them. The books are broken. And then they all go to Montenegro like they're going to get a better connection. The Wi-Fi signal's better over there to the lower astral or something. I don't know, but they're definitely seeing what they're doing is not working. So just before I got on the news, pretty much everybody looked like this. Is there anything left that she hasn't taken? How long before she has it all is what they said. Now it's not me that has it all.
Yeah.
It's just that I have
humanity.
the wisdom to change it.
Yeah. It's us. Right.
It's us. Because that's my job. If I don't do my job, I also lose the wisdom.
Right.
So. And I'm not willing to do that for you guys. So, no, I'm just kidding. I will do everything I'm asked, even when it sounds crazy.
Okay, I was just going to say, was this the apples coming back? Was it kind of a buildup? Because one thing that I have noticed over the last week is just lots of messages from source, like boom, 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 but like way more than I normally get. And I wasn't sure if that was needed for me at that time based on things I was going through. So I'm wondering, was there a ramp up to this, or was it just like, boom, okay, your apples are back?
Well, as the dark consciousness goes away, it becomes less like, and I've been saying this for months now, that, before you were kind of like wading through a sea of mud, and you could kind of hear it like on the surface, of the water, so to speak, but it's not 100% clear as day all the time. Sometimes it is. Energy is an ebb and a flow. So sometimes it might feel like, well, I can connect today, like boom. And other days it's like, I can't hear a thing. Source, are you still home? And it just depends on the amount of energy, the amount of consciousness, dark consciousness in the past. But as all that starts clearing away more and more and more, you're not wading through mud to get those messages anymore.
Okay. That makes sense.
So you'll start to hear them and see them a lot more often. And the other thing that's happening too is people don't always like what Source has to say, apparently. And the other thing is, when you're faced with more light, the more light that shines on something, the clearer you see it. And that also includes yourself. And people are not liking to look at themselves sometimes in a source mirror. It's also the reason why what we find is, how do I say this? Say there's a person in your life, and you are a little bit more awake and aware than, most people are, obviously. And this person comes into your life, and you're not ready to look at yourself. But they might be, glowing aura. They might be an amazing person, totally connected to Source or from a higher density, and have come here, because we're starting to see more and more of those folks walking around too. So what happens subconsciously, even when you look at that person, you are forced to see everything that you are. And they know that person can see everything that you are, because they're that connected. And that's really scary for some people. And then they start to throw stones at those people because they don't want to look. They do not want to look. Remember a while ago I said 95% of the people in this world will blame their problems on someone else?
Yep. So true.
And it continues. Yep. And it continues. Well, we're going to have to accept that sovereign responsibility at some point in time. At some point in time, you're going to have to look at yourself. You're going to have to take yourself and love yourself like Source loves you for all the things you are and all the things you're not and all the things that are within you and all the things you've done in the past, and just realize that they're like a parent. Source is like a parent. You might not like what your kids are doing right now, but you love them unconditionally regardless.
Yeah.
And, it's not so bad to look at yourself. It's not so bad to accept responsibility for maybe not knowing something, maybe not understanding something, maybe making a bad judgment call, which could have affected another human. It's okay to say I was wrong. And I will get on here if there's something that I found out later is not true, or that it's not completely gone. And I will tell you I was wrong. I had no idea that there was more to this or that. Because I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
I'm human. In this world, I'm a human. You all might be from somewhere else, but today you're a human. Not being a human's not so bad. And enduring all we've had to endure to exist here, to just exist and have a little bit of happiness in life, has been pretty rough. So give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. And stop looking at the knowledge and the books that people put out that tell you that Source is going to hate you for doing this, or, maybe a failed pregnancy or something like that. Like, don't stop, just stop. You're the one being hard on you, and you're the one that thinks you don't deserve wisdom because you did X, Y, Z because the book said I'm not supposed to do that.
Right.
No one on this earth has walked a mile in your shoes. No one. Only you have walked in your shoes. You've experienced all the things you've experienced, both positive and negative and sad and happy moments in your life, and maybe life lessons, you might call a mistake in your life. But I can tell you right now, you can still walk home to Source at any given moment in time. He will forgive you and love you just the same as if it never happened. So, welcome to wisdom.
How about them apples?
How about them apples? That's right. One rotten apple does not spoil the bunch anymore.
No, those are gone. Well, that's great. That's amazing news.
So good news for a Friday and lots of homework for all of you for a weekend.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you, Kim. Have a good weekend. Hopefully we'll see you back. Good
to see everyone. I hope you like the new whiteboard.
I love it. It's fantastic. Want to share news from UNN? Help us change the face of social media and use it for good. Connect with us through our online channels. Our social media team creates clips from each newscast you can easily share with people you care about. And that's also where you'll find our UNN meme of the day. It's a great way to encourage critical thinking. And links to all of our social media sites are available at the bottom of our new website at unitednetwork.earth. Let's change the face of news together. That wraps up today's news update. Please share UNN with your friends and family. We need everyone to come together and help restore our planet.